This time on the Families Matter Most podcast.
And then there's just been so many challenges in the last 40 years that have helped me, even though they are painful in that moment, that have helped me to remember to use my voice, to speak up, even though it's super uncomfortable.
Oh, so hard.
So hard. So
we have all of the things. Like it's one thing to have the courage to say what you have to say, but then you have all the back end stuff and all of the thoughts and all of the judgments and the fears.
My gosh. Yeah. And those things stop us before we even say. Right?
Yes.
Every time Jenn Dean speaks, I can see hope, knowledge, expertise, wisdom, and love.
When Jenn Dean speaks about parenting, we make sure that we are there to listen because we know we will get valuable advice.
Families Matter Most with Jenn Dean.
She doesn't just give skills for us to be better parents, but she teaches us how to reach our children's hearts. And at the end of the day, that's what truly matters.
Welcome to the Families Matter Most podcast. I have a guest with me today that you are going to love. She is a coach right here in Saskatchewan. She has an amazing story, and she is helping a certain group of women to really step up. Welcome, Amanda Perrot. Thank you for coming.
Woo! Thank you so much for having me.
Amanda owns her own graphic design business.
Yes, that's right.
Where is that?
In St. Bruce, Saskatchewan, so 3 hours straight north of Regina.
Oh, what is it called?
First Choice Graphics. We employ 15 people. 13 of those are women. So
Nice.
Yeah, I'm all about helping women, empowering women, which is such a cliche thing to say. I understand that. But yeah.
But for real, Amanda's doing it for real.
For real, yeah.
So you own a business, entrepreneur. Also, you run a coaching business called Alchemy.
Yes, that's right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've been a business owner for 12 years, and I've taken everything that I've learned from the 12 years, and transformed that into Alchemy. So I help businesses and organizations, lots of nonprofits actually, to remember to come back to themselves. What are their strengths? What are their skills? And remind them of that, because there's so many distractions in the world, especially these days. And if they can remember that and focus on that, then they can serve the people that they need to serve.
Do you see that in business world? Do you see a lot of people are just kind of aimlessly just floundering, trying to do the things, be the hustle, get up at 5 a.m., do all the work, be successful, but yet they feel like they're failing at everything?
Absolutely. It's like they're on a hamster wheel, right? And I just go and go and go. And so I should be doing social media. I should be doing all these things and making maybe a podcast or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there's just so many external factors telling us what we should do, what we should be. And if we can just block that out and remember what our strengths are. We're not all meant to have podcasts. We're not all meant to write, whatever that is. But we are all meant to serve our group of people. And if we can remember that, then it's magical. It is incredible.
And to do it in a way that feels good, because I think for a lot of my community, most of us are women, most of us are moms. And this idea of serving can feel like I'm just depleting. I'm just pouring out to everyone all the time. That's all I do is serve.
Right.
What would you say to that? How do I even know where to focus? Maybe saying no has got to be the hardest thing. How does saying no serve anyone?
Right. So, okay, this is a brilliant question. Let's
Unpack that,
Oh
Amanda.
my, that's no big deal. No pressure. I think there's a distinction that needs to be made between the things that we should be doing, what we think. So I became a stepmom 5 years ago, and I was like, okay, what do good moms do? Because I didn't have my own biological children. So I was like, what do they do? I just looked around me, all the external factors, and all the moms that I knew that I considered to be good moms, they gave and gave and gave and gave, right?
Right, all the time.
Oh my gosh. But then I soon realized after burning out that that's actually not the case. And so to tie that back to business or organizations, there's so many external factors of what we think we should be doing. But if we can come back to ourselves in this crazy, chaotic, overwhelming world and remember what we're really good at, or identifying what we're really good at if we don't know, and then operating every day from that place, then that's where the magic happens. That's where the true power comes from. And so I think there's a distinction in terms of serving, right? You can serve the people that you think you should serve or all the things that you should do, but then you can serve people that you're meant to serve. And it can never always be the people that you're meant to serve all the time that fills you up. Like that's not life, right?
Right.
There's often times where we have to give and provide and support. But if we can somehow get that, like, I don't know, 60-40, if we can get 60% of that time of serving to the people that we're meant to serve, that fills us up, that allows us to serve the people where we're not necessarily getting it back. And that's okay. I'm
on a tangent now. I'm thinking about, was it like the past few years, maybe a decade ago, I don't know, where the coaching world, there's kind of like whatever's the new coaching thing, but there was a time when it was very much about identifying your weakness and then working on your weakness. It was, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So you got to identify the weakness, work on the weakness. And I think it contributed to a lot of burnout.
Oh my gosh.
Because we weren't working out of our strengths.
Right. That's exactly it. I actually used to be a geologist. I was in oil and gas in Calgary.
Wow.
I know. I didn't mention that. But one of the best supervisors I've ever had, he brought me into his office one day and he said, Amanda, do you think that you should work on your weaknesses or your strengths? And I answered, well, my weaknesses, of course, so I can get better, right? And he's like, no, your strengths. Your strengths. If you focus on your strengths, which are talking to people, reading people, understanding whatever room you go into that you can navigate that, and then looking at your technical skills and focusing on that, that's all that we need. That's actually more than what we need, and that's brilliant. To focus on our weaknesses and try to get better is just,
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
And it's not what we enjoy anyway.
Right?
Like, let's just sit down and talk about everything I'm not good at. No thanks.
Right? Like, the list is very long.
It's very long.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it's like, even if there's like 3 or 4 things in your life that you're great at, and to focus on that every day, whether that's in your personal life with your family and friends or at work, you can focus on that. Oh my gosh. Like
Amanda, now you have a story, because nobody ever decides to become a coach without overcoming something, without realizing, hey, and I was, from getting to know you, you spend a lot of time talking about finding your voice. That's really important to you. So I have to ask you, why? What happened?
I grew up, the first 20 years of my life, I was extremely shy, extremely introverted.
Really?
However, the first 2 or 3 years of my life, because I don't remember those years, my mom tells me that I was extroverted, outgoing. I loved being around people. I loved having fun. But something switched around the age of 3, where I became very focused on internal and shrinking, basically. And I won't get into it, but there's a lot of family stuff happening where I felt pressure to be the people pleaser, to make sure that everybody around me was okay, navigating all of their emotions. I have 4 sisters, and while it was so great, like, it was incredible to have 4 sisters and that companionship and camaraderie. My role in our family was to make sure that everybody else was okay. I was the peacemaker. So when I turned 20 and when I was in university, that's when I started to come out of my shell again. And I started to understand that I'm actually quite outgoing. I love talking to people.
I am fun.
Right? I'm super fun. I love fun. Oh my gosh. And then I just turned 40 last year. So in the 20 years since then, it's been this deep uncovering of me, of remembering who I am.
Just lovely.
Well, thank you. Thank you. No pressure to say that as I'm like staring at you
No.
across the room here. Oh my gosh. But yeah, and then there's just been so many challenges in the last 40 years that have helped me, even though they were painful in that moment, that have helped me to remember to use my voice, to speak up, even though it's super uncomfortable.
So hard.
So hard. So
we have all of the things. Like, it's one thing to have the courage to say what you have to say, but then you have all the back end stuff and all of the thoughts and all of the judgments and the fears.
My gosh. Yeah. And those things stop us before we even say. Right?
Yes. Now, I know a little bit of your story. Harassment is something you've had to overcome. So I'm picturing, Amanda, you were super outgoing, extroverted, lighthearted, and then life happened. And you learned your role is to always be fine and never not be okay, and always be the helper and be what everyone needs you to be in the moment. And then you had this like unveiling of who you really, really are. But then in the last couple of years, since then, you had to go through something really hard in your life to do with harassment and specifically like your voice shutting down.
Yeah. So a few years ago, there's a woman in my life who doesn't particularly like me. There's a number of reasons for that. But her behavior came out really strongly a few years ago. And what that looked like was intimidating emails, very cruel emails, just the worst emails, the worst words that you can think of, dear listener.
Like triggering every insecurity you have, all of the things.
Absolutely. It was phone calls to my cell phone calls to my office, a couple in-person encounters. But it led to the point where I felt not safe. I felt unsafe. My nervous system just was hijacked. My nervous system went to flight or fight, freeze, and I shut down. I shut down because I didn't want to write email newsletters. I didn't want to reach out to my community to serve the people that I am here to serve. I didn't want to do that because I was afraid. I was extremely fearful of repercussions of this woman coming after me again, and I couldn't do it. So I shut down for a few years, just hid. I call my house my cave because sometimes I just go and hide in my cave. And even though I know it's not the healthiest for me, sometimes I just need to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and
it was awful.
Sometimes maybe that is the right thing. Sometimes that can
true.
look like self-care,
right?
Taking care of yourself. But I think there's a different feeling when we're like resting and recovering versus we're hiding.
For sure.
And we're shrinking.
Because one like specific example, every night, I didn't sleep for years in that time. I was always on edge. I always had one ear listening, even while I was sleeping, is the door opening? Is somebody coming into my house? Do I have to be fearful? And at work, like all the time, it was all the time. There was no safe space for me to be. And so, when your nervous system is hijacked, the part of your brain that is creative and you can't even do that. You can't even function in that capacity.
You can't put yourself out there and be vulnerable when you have this fear.
That's exactly it.
Protect.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been a long journey, and in the last year or so, I've finally started to come out of that again through an intense amount of coaching and counseling and energy sessions and all the things that I could find to help me move through that.
Amanda, in the back of my mind, and I don't talk about this ever, but being on a radio show, there is in the back of my mind this fear of, what if this is a small city? What if somebody just is a wacko? What if somebody, I take the same route? And I think sometimes anyone that wants to find me can. And it is a little scary, especially because I'm in the radio business and I know of some examples of that happening. And, and I hope and I pray it never happens to me, but it is a reality that women in particular have to think about when you live a life in the media.
Yep.
And so even hearing you share some of your story, it's hard for me to hear because you're speaking to something that I am kind of afraid of. But what really encourages me is that you've come through it. You have found your voice. You now speak and help women to get through similar situations. So I hope that I never have to call you saying, it happened.
And if you do, I've got your back.
Absolutely. So you worked really hard. How? How did you find your voice again? How did you learn how to be vulnerable again? You had coaches, you had counseling, you did all the things, but you still had to take those steps.
Yeah. So what pulled me through that was remembering who I'm here to help, who I'm here to serve, what Amanda the human, is here to do. And what I believe that I'm here to do is to help people find their voices or refine their voices so that they can do what they're meant to do. Communication, vocal expression, all of that is such a huge part of what we're here to do, right? You can keep everything, all your knowledge inside, but that doesn't actually serve anybody, right? Like Jen, you could keep all of your knowledge, all of your experiences, all of your lessons inside. But if you didn't choose to share that, you wouldn't positively impact your audience, your people, right?
My community, my people.
At some point, that pulls us forward to know that we're safe, to do the work that's required to know that we're safe and that we can do it, and then keep going. When that pull is stronger than the fear, that's when it tips forward. And it's not to say that it's like one straight path, because it goes back and forth, absolutely. But that's life, right? Every day we're met with circumstances or scary situations that we just need to move through. And community, knowing that there's other people out there going through the same thing, makes us feel way less alone. And if that person can do it, then I can do it too, right? And I think that's what you do. Well, that's what you do with your community.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We are in the trenches together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My people, man, I often will say, look, I've done everything wrong. So learn from my mistakes, please. Please. I've tried it this way. Don't do that.
Right?
That doesn't work.
Yeah. You want to make it easier for them.
Absolutely. And you're right. That is the drive. Because even on my hardest days, even on the days if I get a text that tells me I'm a stupid bimbo, which has happened, what's going to help me to keep moving? What's going to help me to keep moving forward is, okay, but who am I here to serve? What are my strengths? Like, what am I here for? What is my purpose? So maybe that's part of it. So let's say on the one hand, let's deal with some of the fear, do the coaching, counseling, therapy, do all of that.
Yep.
But yet what you're talking about, Amanda, is really deep diving into what are your strengths? What is your purpose? Why are you here? Who are you here to serve?
Yes.
And does every woman have someone that they're here to serve? Does every woman have a calling like that?
Yes, I think so. And maybe some of your listeners are like, well, I don't know what that is. What are you talking about?
I'm home with 3 kids. I change diapers all day.
Right?
You know, other listeners are like, no, man, I am rocking it. I'm a CEO. I'm balancing this work thing, this life thing.
We have a whole spectrum of listeners, and that's incredible, right? And I think it also depends on what season of life you're in, right? Sometimes you don't have the capacity to go out and serve the people that you're supposed to serve, because that also sounds very like grandiose and, oh, you just find your purpose. That's super simple, no big deal. But it is a big deal. And sometimes it takes years or decades to find that. And that's okay. That's okay. I think of like my mother and her generation, right? Where it's sometimes taken decades, and they're still looking at, what is my purpose? What am I here for?
Oh, yes.
Right?
And some of those generations, like, that's a real thing. You didn't have
there was no option.
You didn't have a purpose. You
right?
just did what you were told to do. You do what you should do. This is what a good wife and mother does.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly it. So I think even if, when we're on our deathbed, let's say we live till we're 100 years old.
Okay.
And there's, I think that everybody that has tried and has lived a good life, and that they'll be okay, right? It's not like, oh, I had to find my purpose, because maybe your purpose is being present with your family. Maybe your purpose is going to work and kicking butt and inspiring others what to do. There's this whole range of purposes that I don't think any of us can actually define for anybody else.
That's true. When I was younger, when my kids were small, I loved being a stay-at-home mom. I loved it. And I had all the fears. I had fears of, is this going to be the right thing for our family? Financially, can we make this work? We're choosing to live on one income. Are we going to regret this? And then as my kids started to get a little bit older, I had all the fears of, what am I going to do when they get old and move out? And then I have to start a career. And my fear specifically then was, I'm going to have to start a career at the bottom and work my way up when other people my age are like 2 decades ahead of me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to have 20-year-olds as my boss. That was like, I'm going to have to do that. But it's been really cool that my purpose, I would never have believed it when my kids were young. I would never have believed that I would be doing what I get to do today. But my purpose was my family. And it started there. And then I started sharing parenting strategies with other parents who were saying, can you come and help me? Can you teach me what you're doing? Because I see it working. And that's where it started. And I had no idea where it would lead. But you're right. In that moment, even when my kids were small, I was very clear on what my purpose was. And I was really happy staying at home.
Right? Like, you have no regrets on that, do you?
No regrets at all.
It wasn't easy.
100% no. It wasn't easy, but no regrets. And now it's so fascinating because I totally love what I'm doing now. Now I'm definitely not at home. My youngest is 18.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, I love it because I was going to say, like, how did you figure out where to go or what to do, right? But you said that you just started every day, just like sharing advice. And yeah.
Well, I was crying. Let's back it up. I was crying every day and felt like the worst mother that ever lived. Let's start there.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's like you're in my brain. Oh.
I literally thought a stranger off the street could do a better job with
Right?
my kids than I could. I was failing them in every way.
Oh my gosh.
They were going to grow up and be in a gang or be a leader in jail one day.
Sorry. I should laugh because like sometimes that happens, right?
But you've thought it. You've thought the same
Oh my
thing.
gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
right?
it started there, and then I went on this kind of mission to try and figure out what could work and what could actually work and also preserve the relationship, because I'm dating myself, but during those days, Dr. Phil and Oprah were like the king and queen of parenting.
Yep.
And it was very much about behavior modification, and it was not at all about the relationship. So I could make the kids do things, but I could sense that I was losing them in the process.
Oh, wow.
So I went on a journey to find what are ways to have kids that are good kids, that will listen,
Yep.
that will be obedient, respectful children, but not at the expense of the relationship.
Ooh.
So it took me a long time, but I found these little things. And then I think because, people in my community would see me, carrying angry kids, kicking and screaming all the time. And then it got better. And then they were saying, what did you do? Like, this is a transformation.
Yep.
Started sharing it. I remember the first day someone said, would you come over to my house and would you teach? That was my very first super nanny. Like the TV show?
Yes.
I
Oh my
do
gosh.
that. I go into people's homes and I can absolutely transform. I can help you fix all the things. But the very first time a mom came to me and said, Jen, would you come over to my house and would you teach this stuff to me, my husband, and my kids?
Yep.
And I remember I was terrified and I thought, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to charge. And so I literally thought, well, my kid's piano lesson is $20 for a half hour. So I'll charge $40 for an hour and it'll be the same as piano.
Oh my God. I love that. But you did it,
But
right?
I did it because as scared as I was, I thought this feels like what I'm meant to do. This is my purpose.
And what was it? What did that feel like in your body?
Fear? Nervousness. Nervousness,
Yeah.
but like a hopeful nervousness.
That.
There's like the dread.
Yeah.
What have I done? What did I do?
Oh my gosh.
Why did I do this?
Yeah.
There's the dread.
Yeah.
But then there's this like hopeful, excited nervousness. If I really want to do well, I really want to help this family. I really want to make a difference.
Yeah. And that's the pull. That's the pull of helping, right?
So you say, Miss Amanda, you say you can help every person find that.
That's some pressure.
Yeah, I think you can do it.
I think so. This is that would be like a fun challenge, but I think so. I think there's just so many layers, right? Like if we're all onions and then we've just built up all of these layers over decades, and especially as moms and caregivers, all of the shoulds, those shoulds are heavy, heavy layers.
Oh, and they're so shamey.
Oh.
There's so much judgment,
Right.
shame and guilt in there.
Yeah. Like it's intense. And there's often times where we just feel like hiding under the covers and watching Netflix and just numbing and just being like, it's too much. And oftentimes it is too much. But if we can just take like 7 minutes and just, I don't know why I said 7 minutes. I feel like I'm promising something that
It only takes, change your life in 7 minutes.
Oh no.
Amanda says so.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. But it's like just like this slow unraveling of not necessarily defining yourself as somebody new, which that could be part of it as well, because we're all evolving and changing all the time and we have new interests and hobbies and all that. But I think I truly believe that we all come here exactly as we are and we build up all these layers, and then there just comes a point where we're exhausted of carrying the layers. And then if we can come back to who we are and what we're meant to do, then that can be our guiding light every day. Whether you put that like on a sticky note on your mirror or whatever. Like, so for example, mine, who I am is fun, no BS, and kind. And that I've known that for probably 10 years. Like I've always known that and been that, but I've known that.
So
like,
you live out of that intentionally.
Yes, every day, every day. And every time that I start to feel off, like in my businesses or whatever, it's just like this deep knowing of like, oh wait, I'm being steered away from who I am. And I'm not in line with my integrity, with my core values, with who I am. I know that that's not going to end well. It's going to distract me and pull me away from what I'm here to do. So, there's some really simple exercises that we can do to figure out what those words are for us, what that is in our bodies, how that feels in our bodies when we're relaxed and calm and full of excitement and joy.
Yeah.
This is not where I thought this conversation was going to go. This is so fast. You are fascinating.
I don't know what that means. Where did you want it to go, my friend?
Well, I like control.
So Amanda has her own podcast, but you're not the boss today.
I know. This is so annoying. Oh my gosh. I love it.
No, this is all good. I just think it's fascinating. You talk about your core beliefs and living out of those core beliefs that you have defined. You've done the work to figure out who you are. Is that what you mean by living out your intuition?
That's an excellent question. So I look at two parts of our brain. Left brain is logical brain, which is where our society operates out of a lot. Right brain is creative, intuitive brain. So when I talk about, what are those words for you? Me, it's fun, no BS, kindness. A lot of that actually does come from our left logical brain. But the knowing comes from our right intuitive brain. So when I talk about intuition, I guess what I mean by that is you can be in any situation, in any room, and you can sense the energy. You can sense what's going on around you, and you can know, one, what you need to do, what you don't want to do, and just really trusting yourself and trusting your awareness. So I think when I say intuition, I mean awareness. That could be awareness of other people, of other situations, of directions that you want to go in. And to be clear, I really developed that skill, this intuitive skill, over the last 10 or 15 years. The first decades of my life, I didn't know what intuition was. I didn't know that you could just trust yourself.
And let's be real, we were probably actively taught to ignore that side.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
If you were a woman listening to this podcast, I'm sure, were told to ignore that. Just stuff it down. Just be okay. Just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just go away. Just leave them alone.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly and I was taught that from my mom, who was taught that from her mom, and like generations of just stuffing that intuition down, right? But I don't even know how often I use my intuition 100% of the time, all the time. But it's taking me 10 or 15 years to really get to that place, to trust it. And when you start that journey of trusting your intuition, which I feel like all of your listeners are on that journey, right? They wouldn't be here.
Absolutely.
Like even the knowing to follow you. To like they know that this works for them, right?
I'm not light and fluffy. So anytime, and this is Amanda, anytime I'm with someone, I don't do like the small talk. I'm like, so how's your life? What's going on? What are your hopes and dreams? How can I help you? Let's talk about it.
How are you really feeling? Like what's actually happening?
So people that don't like to work on themselves or to talk about the hard things, they really don't like me. And I've just had to be okay with that because I just don't want to talk about the weather and the riders.
Right? Like that's just not your
It's just not
audience. And that's not you, right? So but have you felt pulled in the years to focus on the riders and the weather, right?
100%. I used to like scan news articles. I felt like I had to know about all the news and all the politics and all the sports and all the so that I could do all the small talk. And now no.
But that's exhausting. Is that exhausting to you?
Super exhausting and absolutely not my strength.
Right.
So even though I was trying, I always felt kind of dumb. I could handle like the headline, and then when someone said, "But what do you think about so-and-so's position on the team?"
That.
Go team.
Go Riders.
Yeah. Oh, look, I gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's not your strength, right?
Not
You're
my
like,
strength.
let's cut through. Let's get to the good, juicy,
Yes,
deep conversations,
yes.
which is what you do on your podcast, which is incredible.
So, all my people are here for it.
Oh
and
my gosh.
I'm so grateful.
Yeah, because your listeners know that this works. Like, they know that this is part of their intuition of like
Absolutely.
showing up, listening to this when they're in the vehicle, when there's kids screaming, whatever it is, because they know that this works for them, right? And I think that's what intuition is for. Intuition, at the end of the day, is helping us to know what works for us, to put our strengths out into that world.
I love it. Amanda, she has a business called Alchemy, and she helps everybody, men and women, find their voice, have the courage to use their voice, and then deal with all those negative
Yes.
fears and stuff in the background, being able to live out of your strengths and from your intuition. And I think that's so needed. I think that's absolutely needed. So I just want to put Amanda out there and her business. Amanda, people that are interested, they're like, hey, I like this Amanda chick. I want to know more. Where can they find you? What do you have as options for clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I primarily work with businesses and organizations right now to remind them to come back to themselves, to serve their people. But you can find us on Alchemy Life on Instagram. alchemylife.com is our website, and I host workshops. I do public speaking. I go out into communities and organizations and just talk about stuff like this, about using your intuition, about trusting yourself, about focusing on your strengths. And I love people. I love speaking. And even though part of me is terrified, the young part of me that was super shy is like, what are you doing? This is not safe. Are you nuts? Like, what's happening? But I love it. I love it.
Particularly for business owners, if you want to work in maybe senior management or all staff on coming back to yourself, working out of your strengths, learning how to run your business more effectively. And what I'm hearing from Amanda is not feeling pulled in all of the million directions. You should be on this, and you should have this, and you should be on Instagram. Oh, and don't forget LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn because my brain is just like, no.
Too much. It's too much. Yeah. So I host workshops. I do one-on-one coaching for leaders. I work with a lot of leaders because they have an amazing capacity to create ripple effects within their organizations, right? So I help them come back to themselves, and I love it. I love this work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Follow Amanda, Alchemy Life. And we're going to see more of her around Saskatchewan in the next couple of years, I'm sure.
I guess. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for listening to the Families Matter Most podcast with Jenn Dean, part of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. If you are interested in contacting Jenn for one-on-one parent coaching, for speaking engagements, or just to get a little more information, please visit our website, familiesmattermost.com.